Hello everyone, welcome back to Cole Sports Reports, and in today's video, we have my first mock draft. I'm doing this now instead of next week or a couple weeks from now when the draft is actually closer, mainly just because of the couple trades that happened about a week ago with the Niners, Eagles, and Dolphins, and I thought that was a very big, point within the draft that I think it'd be a good time now to do a mock draft. So, let's get right into this. So I think it's clear and obvious who number one is. I don't think that really changes in any mock draft, or at least any good mock draft. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence. Simplest piece out there. I don't see there being a reason why he wouldn't get taken, except maybe another injury that comes up, but I doubt that'll happen. So yeah, I think that one's just clear and obvious. For the next pick, I think that Zach Wilson is a very good player, and I think that he has a high likability of coming up in second. But I think as of right now, I think the Jets are going to trade this pick, and there has to be a team out there that desperately needs a quarterback, and I think that a team like the Broncos are very desperate. Now, the details of this trade don't necessarily matter. This is just so to make the trade go through. So I have just this. I don't think this is a very realistic trade offer, but we'll make it work. Like I said, the aspects of the trade don't necessarily matter. It's just the fact that they have this pick. So, now the Broncos at number 2. I think this is still Zach Wilson. To the Niners now. Now, I think the likely timing of this trade has a lot to do with either Mac Jones or Trey Lance. Because at the time of this trade, Justin Fields had not had his pro day. His kind of credibility as a quarterback was still up in the air. So I think this is either between Mac Jones or Trey Lance, and I think Trey Lance is the more likely option here, so I have them taking Trey Lance. Now the Falcons at 4. Do you take a quarterback and then cut Matt Ryan and save a bunch of money next year, or do you stick with Matt Ryan and get a playmaker or maybe even an offensive lineman like Penei Sewell? I think here you take a guy who's from the Georgia area, and that is Justin Fields. He went to college at Georgia for 1 year. He went to high school in Georgia. So I think just keeping him in the area of where he's familiar to and still getting your new good quarterback is a good idea for the Falcons. Now, with the Bengals, I think Penei Sewell would be a good option, but I think his character concerns are making him fall down the list. Some off-the-field things, just people are starting to not like him as much. Plus, apparently Joe Burrow has talked to Bengals ownership and has given them a tip to take Jamar Chase, and I think that is also why the Eagles traded down, and that was to kind of cement the fact that the Eagles were going to take Jamar Chase, but everyone thinks that the Bengals will, so they traded down. So I'm going to have the Bengals taking Jamar Chase. Now, with the Dolphins, this is a tough pick, because do you take a playmaker like Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle, or do you keep it on the good side and take an offensive lineman to protect Tua? And this is a very rough pick, very just kind of goes around the decision of what you think about Tua. Do you think he's going to be the future quarterback? Do you think they're going to use someone else after next year or maybe in this upcoming year? So I think you just take the best offensive player available, and right now I think that's Kyle Pitts. Now with 7 to Detroit, I think they need, after losing Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones, I think you really just need a do-it-all receiver. And in my opinion, that is Devontae Smith. Back there now to the Panthers. We have Penei Sewell still on the board. You have Jalen Waddle still on the board. You have any other guys. They do desperately need a quarterback, at least in their eyes. I think Teddy Bridgewater could get the deal done. They can really use him, but I don't think they will, and I think they're going to take Mac Jones, which is a very controversial pick, I understand, because people don't think Mac Jones is that good, but I think people look too much these days at things like the 4.4, like the 40-yard dash. I think people look at that way too much. I think just because he's not mobile doesn't mean he's not a good quarterback, so I think he's still a great quarterback and very easily can go top 10. Down to the Jets now, who traded with the Broncos earlier. And so this one is also kind of rough. Do you take a playmaker and give the Sam Darnold, or do you protect him a little more, or do you go on the defensive side? Now, I don't know. This one took a lot of thought for me, and I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle. In my opinion, he's the receiver one in this class. I know that's controversial due to his injury and just how he played in the national championship, and just because of how good Devontae Smith is and Jamar Chase. But I think Jalen Waddle is, in my opinion, wide receiver one. Now to the Cowboys. I think that they are just going to finish off what they started in free agency with getting a corner, and I think due to Caleb Farley's injury concern and just the fact that Patrick Surtain is just better than J.C. Horn in my opinion, they will go with Patrick Surtain. Now 11 to the Giants. Now I think this has to come down to the offensive line since there is no really big playmakers left or really worthy of taking at this position in the draft. Now this could be Penei Sewell. He is left. He is one of the best, if not the best, offensive lineman in the draft. But, like I said, due to his off-the-field issues, I think he's going to slip just a little more. And I think that they are going to go with Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern. I think he fits them better than Sewell does, and he has more... I think he has a higher peak than Penei Sewell does. So now we're going to move on to the Eagles, who just traded down a few days ago. I still don't necessarily agree with that decision, but they made it nonetheless. And I think now, not having any big receiving threat left, or really just any like stud, overall offensive player left, I think that they are going to look more towards the defensive side, and I think they're going to take a linebacker, and I think that they're going to take the best linebacker available in this draft, which is Micah Parsons, who also has off-the-field issues, but I think that they can get him back together. Then we're going to go down to the Chargers. Now, this could also be Penei Sewell. This could also be Christian Darrisaw. Really, it comes up to personal preference, and I'm going to say that's Penei Sewell. I think him falling farther than 15 is just like insanity. I don't think he's that bad off the field. I think he still deserves to go top 10, if not top 15. 14. Now, I think most people have this pick being the same in almost every single draft, and I think it's just because of how well he fits their system, and that is Elijah Vera Tucker. He's like a dream from heaven, just because of how good he fits this offense. So, Elijah Vera Tucker for 14. 15 to the Patriots. This one is also pretty controversial for whoever you have. Some people have them taking an offensive option. Some people have them trading forward to get a quarterback like Mac Jones or Trey Lance. Personally, I think that they are going to take a kind of out there player, someone who they don't necessarily need but is so good that they cannot pass up, and that is, in my opinion, JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame. 16 for the Cardinals. This one is very obvious. They need a corner, terribly. And I don't think Caleb Farley's injury concern is that big after we've seen him run 40 times, we've seen him run an insane 40 times since that apparent injury. So I think Caleb Farley is the option here. They need a corner desperately. They need some sort of DB desperately, and I think he's the best one on the board. 17 to the Raiders. This one is also kind of tough, but I think that they're just going to go for the best scheme fit on defense, and that is Kwity Paye out of Michigan. He can kind of play a stand-up edge player, maybe run a QB spot, but definitely is the best option for their defense. 18, back to the Dolphins. Now, I think we're going to go with what we had earlier with potentially taking offensive line, and I think that they are going to be taking, I'm going to say Christian Darrisaw. I think he's just undoubtedly the best offensive lineman left at this point. So yeah, I have them taking Christian Darrisaw. They need to improve that offensive line to protect Tua or whatever future quarterback they have. And that kind of fell apart, but they're needing to rebuild that up so they can protect whatever the quarterback is, especially with their new offensive weapon in Kyle Pitts. Down to the Washington football team at 19. So they did begin to build up that secondary in free agency, but I think to put the cherry on the top of that secondary in that defense, I think they're going to take a corner, and I think that corner is J.C. Horn. Kind of finishing, like I said, finishing what they started in free agency, being able to just cement that defense and to have a really young but good secondary. Now to the 20 to the Bears. I desperately was going to have them move up for quarterback, but I don't think that that is what's going to happen. I think they're going to sit where they are and see what is left at the time, and that honestly, I think they're going to look for a receiver because of Allen Robinson seeming kind of hesitant to sign the franchise tag, and that he's definitely going to leave if they don't extend him long term. I don't think he'll accept another franchise tag. So I think that they're going to take Rashawn Bateman, a potential Allen Robinson replacement, or maybe a wide receiver 2, and then having Darnell Mooney step up into that one role. So yeah, Rashawn Bateman. 21 to the Colts. They need to repair that offensive line with all their retirements that they had, and I think overall the best offensive lineman left is Sam Cosmi out of Texas. He's versatile, which is kind of what they're going to need with some running game with Carson Wentz is kind of a scrambler QB at times, so they'll need a versatile offensive lineman, and I believe that is Samuel Cosmi. 22 to the Titans. This one is also kind of tough. I've had them at times going with Joseph Osai of Texas, but I think a more versatile edge option for them is either Gregory Rousseau or Azeez Ojulari, and I think that it's going to be Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia. 23 to the Jets, their second pick of the draft so far. They need to protect Sam Darnold terribly, and this is where the offensive linemen get very iffy. It's really up to personal preference. And I think that Tevin Jenkins is a very good option here. I think Jalen Mayfield's also a very good option. You could also go with someone like Creed Humphrey, but I think that they also need a versatile offensive lineman to kind of fit together the rest of the offense. And I think that is Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State. 24 to the Steelers. Now, they also need an offensive lineman. And I think that whatever falls into their lap, so whoever the Jets don't take is who they will take. And I believe that that is Jalen Mayfield. Needing to replace, once again, the retirees on the offensive line. Now to the Jaguars, they're also having the second pick of the draft, their second pick of the draft so far. They also desperately need a safety. They could also use some other things on defense, but I think safety is their biggest priority. And I'm going to go with Trayvon Moorhig, who's the just clear best safety in the draft, in my opinion. 26 to the Browns. They need to replace Olivier Vernon and put someone across from Myles Garrett. And I think that they'll also take another edge out of Miami, and that is Jalen Phillips. I know that's kind of controversial with Gregory Rousseau, but I think Jalen Phillips is somewhat better in times, and I think will fit the defense of Kevin Stefanski better. 27 to the Ravens. Now they need to replace Matthew Judon. That was a huge loss on defense, but also do you go for offense and try to keep Lamar there, telling him that, hey, we tried, we gave you some weapons. Obviously, with their failure to get any really good receivers outside of Sammy Watkins and free agency. So I think they're going to go with linebacker, and they're going to go with Zaven Collins out of Tulsa. I know he's not necessarily the best linebacker in the draft, but they needed to replace Matthew Judon somehow. 28 to the Saints. They also kind of need an offensive line, but they also need defensive tackle. So I think they're just going to go with the best defensive tackle available, and that is Christian Barmore out of Alabama. 29 to the Packers. I think that they are going to try to keep Rodgers in Green Bay, so they're going to try to feed him a weapon that isn't a quarterback or a backup running back. But I think that they are going to go with either Terrence Marshall or Kadarius Toney, potentially maybe sliding and getting Elijah Moore in the second round. But I think they're going to go with Kadarius Toney to give a quick and speedy receiver to put on the outside to complement Devontae Adams. So yeah, Kadarius Toney out of Florida. I think he also has a huge possibility of sliding all the way down to the mid-second round, maybe even third round. Just depends on how the teams that need receivers look at him. Alright, 30 to the Bills. This one's also kind of controversial. A lot of people have been taking running back, especially since they kind of re-signed most of their offensive linemen or re-signed everyone that they really needed in free agency. Now, they really don't need much positions that are here, but I think Travis Etienne will completely change the way that their offensive line runs. That being said, they do have two really good running backs that I think could complement each other, but I think Travis Etienne will finish that off. 31 to the Chiefs. This one is also tough because you have them keep building their offensive line, even though they've done a pretty good job of that in free agency, getting Kyle Long and some others. Um, but I think they are going to go on more of the defensive side since they really did seem to struggle to beat that Tampa Bay offense, who really just destroyed them in the Super Bowl. And I think they're just going to go with the best player overall, too, and that is Gregory Rousseau. 32, the final pick of the first round, the final pick of this mock draft, is kind of rough as well because they're in the same situation as the Chiefs. They don't desperately need one position, but there are some holes that they would like to fill. I think receiver could be a viable option, but I think that since Kadarius Toney's gone, there is really no receiver that is worthy of a first-round pick left. And I think that really any position here would be good, but I think there's one player that is left that would really finish off the future of this franchise, being a potential JPP replacement. I'm going to go with Joseph Osai out of Texas. Now the mock draft's over, here we go. We had four quarterbacks in a row to begin, and we had Mac Jones, which is a controversial pick. We had a lot of the receivers going early, so that kind of made it tough for some teams that wanted a receiver. Obviously, with the Bears picking up Rashawn Bateman a little later, but a lot of offensive linemen went, a lot of edges went, and a lot of quarterbacks obviously went. Now, I think that some picks that could change definitely are the Broncos not trading up. I think there's a huge chance that doesn't happen, but I'm fairly certain that it's either going to be Zach Wilson or it's going to be a trade. I don't see them taking any other player here at the Jets. I don't see the Jets taking any other player here other from Zach Wilson. And if they don't take Zach Wilson, then they're most likely going to trade the pick. Where? I don't necessarily know. It could be Carolina moving up to jump the Niners and get Trey Lance or Justin Fields. But I think really that's the only hugely controversial pick I've made. I think some people don't think that Gregory Rousseau could fall that far. I think just because of just the things off the field really have contradicted where he's going in the draft. I think another pick that's controversial is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah to the Patriots. A lot of people have them taking a corner, which I do think is possible. I think that they could potentially pick a corner, then trade Gilmore, or even keep Gilmore and still draft a corner. I think that is a very likely scenario. Bill Belichick is known for confusing people at times, but he does get the job done. So I really think that this mock draft was pretty good. So I'm probably going to do one of these again in a few weeks, just before the draft. So if you want to see that, you can click subscribe and turn on notifications so we can see when that video comes out. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and I'll see you next time. Hope you have a good day, and peace out.